How much coffee should you use to make an espresso? In other words, what's the size of that starting dose? Now, different roasters will have a different interpretation of this. I have seen some roasters suggesting a 14 gram starting dose, and I've seen others suggest something as high as 20 grams, and there's everything else in between. In this video, I'm going to take a look at two common espresso doses, a 16 gram dose and an 18 gram dose. And I'm going to make a couple of espressos, and I'm going to see if changing the dose changes the overall flavour of the coffee. Now I'm going to keep everything else the same as far as possible. So my 16 gram dose is going to yield a 32 gram espresso in about 25 seconds. So a 1:2 ratio. Similarly, my 18 gram dose is going to yield a 36 gram espresso in about 25 seconds. So I'm keeping the ratios the same. Now, one important thing to note are the baskets I'm using. I'm going to change the baskets. So when I go for my 16 gram espresso, I'm going to use a 16 gram basket. And for my 18 gram espresso, I'm going to use the corresponding correct size basket. So here we have our 18 gram dose. It was a 35.9 gram yield, and it was a 27-second shot. So I let it cool a little bit. I like my espresso to cool for 3 or 4 minutes before I taste it. And that's the kind of character of an espresso that I really like. It's got this lovely, bright, slightly crisp acidity that softens as it kind of stays in your mouth, and the sweetness kind of comes through with a lovely kind of coating feeling. I kind of like that combination of acidity and sweetness. It's how I like that espresso to taste. You really kind of get that fruity, juicy tone coming out of this coffee. So here we have my second espresso, 16 gram dose. The 31.8 grams was the yield, 28 seconds. So in a sense, they're very similar in terms of the numbers. It's cooled down again, but let's have a taste. Immediately that bright, crisp acidity has kind of disappeared. There's still acidity there. It's much, much mellower, and the finish is a lot more obvious. I've got this build-up of a much sweeter tone, kind of further back in the mouth. Probably a little bit more mouthfeel. The first one felt a little bit thinner coating, but this feels a little bit thicker in the mouth, a little bit richer, I would say, as well. It's clear that something's happened here. And to many of you, this is probably obvious, but it's worth noting. When I first made this espresso on the same grind setting, it came through in 22 seconds. So as I moved from 18 grams to 16 grams, I had to go finer on the grinder. Therefore, the particles were smaller, and therefore they would have extracted differently. To be honest with you, there's a darker finish to this 16 gram shot that I wasn't getting with the 18 gram shot. For me personally, as an espresso, I think the 18 gram had a nicer finish. It was lighter and mellower. At 16 grams, it's a little bit rich for me. So what should we take away from this? You know, over the years, I keep seeing this kind of devotion to recipes that roasters suggest. I see it from home users. I see it a lot from coffee shops. They will just listen to this preferred recipe and follow it religiously. Coffee is more complex than that. And I think as roasters, we do people a disservice by pushing these recipes at them. Simply by changing the dose, I've changed how this coffee tastes. And it, granted, one might be better than the other. I might prefer one above the other, but there was nothing wrong. There was absolutely nothing wrong with the 16 gram dose. It was just different. And for some people, they would prefer this. Others would prefer the 18 gram dose. And I think there's an important message here for coffee shops who may religiously follow advice given from coffee roasters and end up making 18, 19, or even 20 gram doses. That's cost. That's product being used. And it may well be that a 16 gram dose will suffice and your customers will be equally as happy And if that's the case, there are real savings to be made. If you've got any thoughts, comments or questions, or if you have a dose that you stick to religiously and like to share it with me, please feel free to leave a comment. Love hearing from you. In the meantime, thanks for watching.